Hey everyone, today I want to talk about a few keys to creating encounters that will fit seamlessly into your campaign. I've long said that I think the 4th edition Dungeon Master's Guide 2 might be the best Dungeon Master's Guide for any edition of Dungeons & Dragons. I'll put a link to my page through video down in the description if you are interested in checking it out in more detail. For this conversation, I want to look at the section titled Encounter as Story on page 38. Combat encounters are pretty straightforward. You look at the party level and then choose some monsters that seem to fit that level and the number of characters. Non-combat encounters can be a little bit different as you try to balance things that you can't necessarily measure with stats. These encounters can more be a test of the players rather than they are for the characters, and that makes them a little difficult. But whether you're building combat encounters or non-combat encounters, this section of the book has some great tips to help you out. The core components of a great story-based encounter that are covered in this section are history, objectives, and outcomes. Let's take a look at each of these. History refers to how this encounter is the culmination of what came before it. While Dungeons & Dragons is known for random encounters and wandering monsters, the reason many don't like using these is because they seem out of place. The occasional spider swarm might be expected, but if you use too many of these, then the party is likely going to get bored and it just kind of turns into a grind. You want to make sure that the party accepts that this foe would be in this location and that they have motivation to engage with the group. The more that you can connect the enemies to the party and where they've been, the more real it's going to seem. The book gives a really nice example of a group that is hunting for an evil orc chieftain. Along the way, they might meet up with other orcs that speak of how evil this chieftain is. The party might even come across clues that ramp up the tension, such as skeletons hanging on the wall or messages painted in blood. This way, when the party reaches the chieftain, it's not just another boss monster, but an enemy that they have come to know and truly recognize that they need to defeat. As you're building an encounter, think about what kinds of seeds you can plant in other encounters that you can pay off here. And don't just save this for the boss monsters. I recommend planting seeds all over the place. Use descriptive language to point out seemingly random objects whenever the party is exploring a location. This is where like the trinkets table could come in. In most cases, the party is going to ignore these items, but when they lock into one, you can use that as a seed for something that comes later on. For example, you might describe a room as having a broken vase with some sort of detailed engraving on it. If someone in the party decides to save that vase fragment, then later on the party might be in another room where they see an intact vase that has a similar engraving. And perhaps these two items go together and they form a key or a magic item or a map or anything else that you can think of. Or maybe someone later on is wearing armor with the same symbol that was found on that vase. So don't worry too much about what it all means when you're putting it together. Just lay out those seeds and have some fun with it. It doesn't take a lot of work and it doesn't have to be a major story element, but when the party sees something in an encounter that aligns with things that they've seen before, it instantly links everything together naturally. The best seed that you can plant to help me out is to click on that like button if you're enjoying this video. The next component of a great encounter is the objective. And this is what you would expect. What does the party need to do? We often talk about combat versus non-combat encounters as though there's this hard line between them, but I think it's more important to look at the objective of the encounter rather than the type of the encounter. This section of the book provides several examples of an objective, such as retrieving an object. This might start out as a non-combat encounter for the party to try and infiltrate a room and steal some object, but it will have more depth if you have enemies in place that might potentially fight the heroes and prevent them from getting that object. And I like the idea of giving every single enemy a personality. What is their motivation? It's boring to simply say that every single enemy is going to fight to the death, and it's not really realistic. Maybe this enemy over here didn't realize what they were getting into, and they have no interest in dying for this cause. And this other enemy likes to talk all brave, but as soon as they take some damage, they're going to run and hide. And then this other one over here is willing to switch sides if the price is right. Including these kinds of details in the encounter can make it a lot more interesting, as every character involved has some sort of motivation that guides their actions. The objective of the encounter might be to steal the object, but if each monster has a different goal as well, then the circumstances of the encounter could be constantly changing, and that keeps it really interesting. And don't worry about coming up with solutions to the problems that you present to the party. This is where skill challenges can go wrong. It's not up to the dungeon master to figure out how to solve the problem. It's enough for you to come up with the objective and create an interesting environment for the encounter. Let the players guide it from there. The final component of a great encounter is the outcome. It's often said that if there's no risk of failure, then why play the game? As an example, I've played video games where my character has 3 lives. Every time I would lose one, I would get a knot in my stomach. And if I was down to my last life, then I would sweat with every single jump that I made. But I've also played those same games using cheat codes where I have unlimited lives. It's much more relaxing to play, but then when I win, I don't feel the same sense of accomplishment. The same holds true for your encounters. If there's no reward for success and no consequence for failure, then it's all going to seem empty. This section of the book points out that you should focus on degrees of success. Retrieving the item easily due to a flawlessly executed plan should have some greater reward than retrieving it but having to resort to combat to do so. And if they fail to retrieve the object, is the party caught and put into jail, or did they manage to escape, but they still have to try to figure out how to get the object? While you don't need to worry about how they're going to solve the problem, you should give some thought to what happens if they win or lose, and try to make those stakes clear to the party. Knowing the consequences of failure can be a great motivator. The more the party knows what happens if they fail, the more invested they're going to be in succeeding. The rest of this chapter provides some great examples that you can use as foundations for your own encounters. And what's great about them is they're not specific to 4th edition. These can easily be used with any edition of Dungeons & Dragons or with any role-playing game in general. Make sure you plant the seeds for your encounter in other parts of your campaign, clearly establish the objectives that need to be accomplished, and make sure the party knows the outcome of success or failure. If you can weave these things together, then you have the makings of an amazing encounter. I'm going to put a link in the description if you want to check out the Dungeon Master's Guide 2 from 4th edition. It is a great resource for any Dungeon Master. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know down in the comments your tips on encounter building. Until next time, take care.